Stop. I can't take it anymore.
Oh, I do the live ones too. Yes, I know. I saw your act in the theater. You're really quite good. Quite a certain harmful habit.
Stop it now, I need it.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome back. We are breaking up with RBS. This is episode number 42. And I am Tawny Santabria.
I am JDK Winnikin. And once again, we are here for another week to debunk the junk of the week, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
So always more to clear away.
We'll never stop talking about this.
Never stop. Right. Well, good to see you, Tawny.
Nice to see you too.
So yeah, another week in the books.
And
And
we're over the hill.
over the hill. Yeah, we've passed episode 40. We're on 42 now. Older, improving, like wine, I guess.
I think so. Yeah.
Or like whiskey.
Yeah.
Looking at
Either
Hubby Dave's shirt. Yes, everybody. Hubby Dave is back for
He couldn't get enough of us.
return engagement. You already know this. If you're watching this on our YouTube channel at Breaking Up with RBS, you can tell Hubby Dave is back for another episode. If you are listening live, thank you so much for doing it, and good morning to you. Way to start your day on a good foot. If you are listening as a podcast, thank you so much for doing so, for subscribing, leaving a review, sharing with your friends. We really appreciate it. And of course, we always want to remind you that there is something available for you to practice in between all these things we're talking about, right, Tawny?
Yes. Or if you're just sick and tired of hearing us talk to you, you can go to integratedgrowthcoach.com and sign up for the 6-week self-mastery course where you are going to learn about you, less about us, and be able to practice weekly and daily presencing practices, learn about the anxiety, learn about what depletes you and what renews you. Good fun.
Yeah, and some techniques and practices to try to get into the body and experience some of the things that we talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. So, and I know there's people taking it and they're getting a lot out of it.
Yep.
That's
absolutely.
That's got to be fun for you. Yeah.
Well, it's just I just think it's fun for everybody.
Breaking up with BS, debunking junk.
Yeah. Lightening our load. It's a good thing.
Right. Okay. So Hubby Dave came back.
He did. Can you believe it?
I can.
We weren't so sure last week.
I don't think he was so sure last
No. No.
I don't believe it, actually.
Well, welcome back.
Thank
you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Good to have you back. It was good to have your insights last week. And so did you bring it back for anything specific or just because?
No, I thought it
let's
was
just see what
good
happens.
fun, and he sort of had this sultry sort of radio voice, and I thought, come
He
on
did.
back. Yeah.
And we switched seats back to our normal formation, which was probably good because like you were distracted by that sultry voice.
I think so.
Holding hands under the table.
I know. It got me off my game. I didn't know. I can't even remember a thing
So
of
gotta
what I talked
separate
about
you
last
two.
week. Yeah. So we just go back. Yeah. I feel better now.
All right.
This is
Well,
good. This is good.
all right. So where do you want to go today? Did you have any thoughts on what you wanted to talk about?
You know, I have had a lot of conversations with people this week, and there's a term that keeps coming up in all of these conversations, and I thought I'd just throw it out there.
Okay.
Gaslighting.
Oh,
How do you guys feel about gaslighting? Like, what comes up when you hear, you just gaslit me or whatever, however you hear it?
I certainly hear it more now today than I did 5 years ago. You know, it's a widely used term. I don't always I think like a lot of terms that gain popularity, sometimes they can get too broad and cover things that aren't necessarily that
Yeah.
sometimes. But gaslighting is like the feeling that comes to me is like that is lying on steroids is the feeling, right? Like it's not just lying, it's gaslighting because it's meant to, if I'm understanding it right, it's meant to, you're trying to convince somebody else that they're crazy on something to cover up
Yeah.
something you're doing.
Can be.
Is that what comes up for
Absolutely.
you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking it's kind of like the word of the day, and people use it for a lot of different things. But I think to your point, historically, gaslighting's been it's a very strong way to describe, lying. Like you said, lying on steroids. It's a perfect kind of metaphor for what I think it is. It's when you're, as I understand it, when you're trying to like convince somebody that you didn't say or do something, and you're using their own examples in a way to make them feel like, am I going crazy?
Mhm.
Crazy making is
Oh yeah.
I've heard Tawny refer to it as
Yeah,
crazy
that was the
making.
old term, sort of. Didn't get
Right.
as much traction as
No.
gaslighting. I think gaslighting feels better to say, or something, because we're using it quite often and we're using it very loosely.
Mhm.
And what it's doing is it's keeping us externally focused, right?
Mm.
So
Whether somebody else is gaslighting us
right, we're not considering whether or not we're gaslighting anybody, because why would we do that?
or
We're
ourselves.
not going to gaslight anybody, right? So, but everyone is gaslighting us, right? So I just thought, okay, let's talk about that. And part of it, like you guys were saying, is on steroids, the lying on steroids. Part of it is, number one, it's a pattern of practice, right? It's not I didn't like what that person said to me, or that person doesn't believe me, so they're gaslighting me. It's not that, right? It's first a pattern of practice in a relationship that is historically a close, tight relationship, whether it be a romantic relationship or a family relationship.
Okay.
Okay. So you think about,
That's where
like,
you hear it most, is in one of those two.
well, that's where it exists in most, right? I hear it from my clients loosely.
Oh, outside of those things.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So here we are. If we really don't want to throw around terms that just then keep us distracted, right? Just want to kind of clarify a little bit. So gaslighting is like what you said. It's more extreme. It's a pattern of practice in close relationships, and it's with intention,
Mhm.
right? There's a power dynamic there,
Yes.
or there's a I don't know my needs, so I'm going to try to control you
Mhm.
so that my needs get met and I don't have to be uncomfortable, right? But it is a behavioral practice
Mhm.
in a relationship.
Yeah, it's part of the dynamic.
Yes, the
right?
dance
It's
that we've talked
the
about
dance, right?
before. Mhm.
It can be a component of that dance.
Yes, yes.
Every relationship in its own way is kind of a dance, but this would
Yes.
be this would be a part of a pattern
Mhm.
within that dance.
Yes, and so when we think about, like, historically, that term crazy making came out of domestic violence relationships, right?
Mhm.
There was a very clear, typically, abuser, and then, a survivor, right? There was the victim. There was a very clear dynamic in that relationship, right?
Mhm.
So, gaslighting sort of replaced crazy making, but now it's become a term where we're using it so loosely
Oh, yeah.
that, okay, somebody said something to me that makes me uncomfortable.
Mhm.
They've gaslighted me,
Mhm.
and I'm not looking inward
Right.
around what was it about that made me uncomfortable.
Mhm.
So it's a way to keep us distracted, focusing externally
Mhm.
as opposed to focusing internally around, huh, what is it for me
Mhm.
that popped up in relation to what that person said?
Mhm.
Right? Because then we can only, I mean, we go back to self-awareness like we talked about last week, right?
Mhm.
That's where the self-awareness starts to become self-awareness is we look
Right.
inward
Right.
instead of continuing to notice all the things that are happening externally to us,
Mhm.
right? That are problems
Mm.
or that we can't control.
Yeah, what's comes up for me is that gaslighting as a term, used the way you're talking about, not for what it actually is, but the way you're talking about, that leaves absolutely no room for not just that introspection, but also you've identified somebody as out to get you,
Mhm.
or somebody is lying, somebody has become a threat, you know, when it could be something as simple as, you thought somebody was doing something and they tell you the truth. That's not what I was doing. But if you don't believe them, it doesn't mean that you're gaslighting, right? Or they're gaslighting you. You might just be wrong.
Mhm.
Is that what you're talking about? Like that and then you'd have to take a look at yourself and go, maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe this reaction is coming from a different place in the situation. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, sure. People, like, if we just go back to lying, if we take it into lying, like, people lie for a lot of different reasons. Somebody who's emotionally unavailable or somebody who doesn't have much self-awareness might appear to lie quite often because they
Mhm.
don't even know themselves very well.
Right.
So here we are in communication and they're just talking about this, that, or the other, and then they're not really aware. And then later on, we found out that they weren't honest and true. right? Like part of our communication style, because we do it so distractibly, that's not a word, right?
It is now.
Okay. Because we're so distracted while we're in communication, oftentimes we just say all kinds of things.
Man.
I mean, I don't know if you guys have experienced this. I know I've experienced.
That's been a thing that you and I have dealt with over the years between each other.
Mhm.
Is that I've often said things that throwaway terms or throwaway comments that I don't really have a lot of intention behind.
Mhm.
But when you're in a relationship with someone who's obviously always very intentional and very present and always coming from that perspective, you have to learn that your comments and statements, they have weight.
You have to learn if you want things to work. Yeah.
measure
You do have choice.
measure
You
your
have choice.
Like we always say, you have
measure your
choice.
statement.
Yeah.
I was thinking that when you guys were talking, you mentioned power dynamic,
Mhm.
and I think that that's inherent, right, in this conversation. There's kind of a power dynamic,
Yeah.
and then I think sometimes people use, for labeling purposes, they use to gaslight. They use that term to label somebody and trying to kind of shift those
Yeah.
dynamics
Mhm.
instead of looking introspectively
Mhm.
and trying to
Mhm.
figure out why they're having such a strong emotion.
Mhm.
It may be justifiable, but it may not be like gaslighting.
Right.
That relationship.
Yes.
It might be something else. It might be
Sure.
something else that there is a real issue, but
Absolutely.
that doesn't make it gaslighting. And to
Yes.
call it gaslighting when it's not obscures
Mhm.
It's sort of
reality.
Yeah, and it's sort of like oh, what's the word? I can't think of it now. Of course, it sort of like minimizes what that term is, right? And then
Yep.
people who really are
Mhm.
experiencing that, because
Yes.
that does exist
Mhm.
and it happens.
Mhm.
People who are really experiencing that now are somehow unable to, advocate for themselves when they're really,
Yeah.
Mhm.
because it
Mhm.
minimizes it.
It does.
Mhm.
It does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and yeah, boy, there's a lot that comes with that.
So instead of like, if we go back to being self-aware, if we're working towards understanding for ourselves when we have a reaction to something somebody says,
Mm.
right? If we're starting to practice softening in those moments, if we're starting to practice like giving space for whatever emotion comes up for us there, as opposed to you just gaslit me, I'm angry, that's unfair, and whatever other story we go to once we start on that train,
Mhm.
right? Like that can take us all kinds of places.
Yeah.
And none of them really probably beneficial
Yeah.
in a lot of ways.
So when you ran into this with your clients this week, obviously it happened enough times for you to
Mhm.
just notice this was a thing.
Mhm.
What do you go into things like, how do you know that's gaslighting? Or do you go into this kind of stuff with them? Like, particularly when you realize it's not part of a family dynamic, it's not part of a relationship, something else, what happens there? What do you do? You're smiling really big and it's
That's because she's about ready to hit you with some knowledge.
No.
could feel it coming.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
palpable.
No, I love just asking the question.
Yeah.
Just asking the question. I don't what do you mean by gaslighting? Right? Because gaslighting it keeps us at a surface. If we can just do this and gaslit this and label this and
Yeah.
that, we stay right at the surface. So I love to and I get the look. It's kind of funny. What do you mean by gaslighting? And I look really confused in my face, right? Because I want to know very specifically what it is that you're talking about, right? So and they look at me like, "Lady, you don't know what gaslighting is?
You know what gaslighting is?
Where have you been?" Right?
Right.
Like so they're kind of surprised. Like, how does she not know what gaslighting is? We're using it all over the place. Of course she must know,
Mhm.
right? But so that's part of the part that's the part that's really important is then that gives opportunity to number one, start to, ooh, I know I'm going to explain gaslighting. I don't even know what I mean by it actually. I just know I didn't like it. I
Right.
didn't
Something
like
happened I didn't like.
what somebody said.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. And maybe, it seems like, people, if particularly in romantic relationships, the fear of being gaslit would be something, maybe, or like, do you feel like people are fearing that? That's what they're getting at, or they just don't really know really what they're saying or why they're using it?
Is it kind of an easy way out of an uncomfortable situation sometimes.
I think if we can make our discomfort about somebody else's issue,
Yeah.
that is the
Yeah.
golden ticket, right?
Now you
But
don't have
it keeps us unaware of
Mhm.
ourselves. It keeps us disconnected from ourselves. And then how in the heck are we going to be able to have healthy relationships off of that?
That's what I keep coming back to, like that protection versus connection. You know, we've talked
Mhm.
about on this show so many times that we're in one mode or the other, right?
Mhm.
And yes, sometimes it's that energy transfer, like we were talking about last week, moving from protection to connection. And connection can go to protection if a trigger situation comes
Mhm.
up, something like that. But yeah, but going to the gaslighting bomb is automatic protection,
Mhm.
makes connection really tough, because the thing about that term is, if you're calling somebody a gaslighter, that's a direct statement about them,
Yes. Mhm.
you know, and their character. And again, to Hubby Dave's point,
Mhm.
there are people who do that.
Mhm.
You know, it's a terrible thing. And yet to just use it off the cuff like that is, I mean, you've essentially made it even harder
Mhm.
to get back to a point of connection, even with yourself,
Yes,
because
absolutely.
you've already assigned it,
Mhm.
right? Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
And there's probably a lot of words that can get thrown around like that do that,
Oh,
that sever
yeah.
connection. And
Oh, absolutely. And the foundational piece is I'm going to look outward to blame or to critique or to find out why I feel uncomfortable,
Mhm,
right? And if we go back to last week, struggle is a part of life.
mhm.
We are going to have unpleasant emotions in our body, no matter how hard and how much effort we give to trying to control them all. They
Mhm.
will be there whether we want to acknowledge them or not. And then, if anytime we feel any of it, the way to feel better is to make it about somebody else.
Oh,
That's a
man.
problem. But we're
Yeah.
all doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our
Yeah.
life is set up that way now.
Yes.
I mean,
Mhm.
that's we're always seeking that sort of distraction, and distraction and minimizing our emotions instead of being present, right? Taking that breath,
Mhm.
kind of sitting with that feeling, and really, how does that make you feel? That sort of, or
Mhm.
why is
Mhm.
that a big deal, right? That's
Mhm.
the other
Mhm.
Mhm.
thing that I hear you often say to me when I'm having an emotion is, why is that? Well, why is that a problem?
Mhm.
Why,
Oh,
why,
man.
Mhm.
why
You
is
get
that
that too?
yeah, absolutely.
You probably got it, way more than I have.
Right.
Why is that a problem? Does it have to be a
Does
problem?
it have to be a problem?
Man, that question.
Right. We get ourselves all spun up about
Mhm.
things that don't have to be problems.
Right, even if
that's
they're real.
and then you gaslighting makes you feel powerful, right? Because you can say somebody gaslit you, so now you feel power in that term, and you feel power like you're
Yeah.
speaking truth to power kind of thing.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And there are times it's appropriate, times but I mean, for the most part, if you're really doing the work and why is this a problem? Does this have to
Mhm.
be a problem?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Um, you don't have to go there, and you don't have to minimize it.
Yeah.
And I think if we expected, like the reverse of that is like, okay, I wake up in the morning, right? I'm going to try to work towards self-awareness. I understand that I'm going to probably feel uncomfortable today. Will it be at 1 or 2 or 5 or 10? I don't know. I'm curious. Like, when am I going to be uncomfortable today, right?
Mhm.
Like, if we allowed for space for discomfort to arrive, because it will.
Be a part of our daily existence.
Yeah,
and
we
experience. Yeah.
won't have to
Mhm.
explain away and use these kinds of terms so loosely, because it's like, oh, yep, there's the discomfort of the day for this moment or whatever. I can handle it. I can soften. I can breathe into that. I can create space for it. It can be what it is. Doesn't have to be a problem. And probably in the next bit of time, that's going to float into something else.
Yeah.
Or in that moment, like we talked about last week, in that moment, another opportunity presents itself,
Mhm.
or another solution presents itself,
Yes.
Another possibility.
rather than throwing out that term, and then you shut off that connection, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Mhm. And this is where, I mean, it's a great point, Happy Dave. I'm
Thank
going to
you.
probably make a certificate when we get home for him. But anyways,
Thank you.
anyways, great
Gold
point.
star.
Yes, great point from Hubby Dave, because if we are focused on our own performance, our own productivity, our own efficiency, you nailed it on the head with what helps us do that,
Mhm.
right? Because if we are self-aware and we're taking a pause, like we're softening into, and something pops up that wouldn't have been able to pop up that leads us to a higher level of performance, a decision that maybe is in the benefit of ourselves and way more, a larger number of people.
Right.
And that creates maybe some efficiency or an opportunity. We're functioning at a higher level.
Yeah. And as a result, our relationships will feel more connected, less protected. And to Hubby Dave's point, I think you develop better discernment about what actually is good, bad. If there is somebody in your life who is in that realm of being a person who might be a legitimate gaslighter, you're going to recognize that and move away from it.
Exactly.
Right. Because the thing that I keep wondering about is in real gaslighting doesn't happen if there's connection. If there's real connection between two people, gaslighting is not going to happen. That's my sense. So gaslighting itself is disconnection and protection, but one must know what it feels like to connect with oneself and by extension, other people in an authentic way to be able to recognize when that just ain't happening.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Because then if somebody's in a relationship where they're being gaslit, once they have that realization about connection versus protection, they're not going to stay in that for much longer. So people who are staying in it, probably haven't really experienced that kind of connection with themselves, at least. I don't know. I'm casting a really wide net all of a sudden.
Right. I think that there's a lot of us. I think that it goes back to like what we talked about last week too. We don't grow up learning to be in connection with ourselves or have self-awareness at age appropriate levels, right? So a lot of people, oh my gosh, if you grow up in trauma.
Oh, right. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Like we
When
have,
would you?
right. We have certain circumstances that are going to make it a little more difficult and challenging. And none of us really have learned to be in connection with ourselves.
And that's one of those areas where that can happen when you're growing up in a house with a family dynamic where there is gaslighting going on.
Yep.
That's going to feel normal for a long period of time. Got it. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Got
right.
it. Or if you saw your parents in that kind of dynamic.
Yes, absolutely. But it's too scary to stay connected with ourselves, even the adults in the home, right? And as children, especially if we're growing up in a home where there's violence and emotional abuse or mental abuse, like if that's happening for us, we're developing coping strategies just to keep ourselves alive, and those are going to be a little bit more extreme, right? So there's a wide range of experiences that we're talking about here. So, but certainly for many of us, that connection to ourselves in a safe and healthy way was and is not being modeled and taught.
So you discover it if you do discover it, it's later in life.
100. Yeah.
Unless
It
you
is.
had someone like role modeling that. for
Right.
you,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you listen to this show.
Yeah. That's probably what are driving people to this show.
Well, this is why we do this show,
Yeah,
right? It's
absolutely.
never too late
Never.
to start to bring in some more self-awareness in a healthy way so the quality of life is more enjoyable.
Well, yeah. And what's interesting about it is that there's not a corresponding relationship between the amount of time where you don't have that and then when you start to develop it. For me, it's been a relatively recent journey. But man, it doesn't feel like I've only done this for a small amount of years and the rest was so long. I'm just so appreciative of the shifts and the changes and the awareness that it just makes each day that much better, in that sense. So that's the encouraging part, right? You don't have to go, well, I didn't learn this for 45 years, so it's going to take me 45 years to learn it. No,
Nope.
It's not.
No, because our bodies are wired to be able to do this, right? We just haven't learned to trust them.
Yeah. Man, have you seen the movie Gaslight, where the term came from?
You know what? I haven't, but I do know that's where the term came from.
Yeah, it's good. It's an old film. I want to say 1940.
Yeah. There's a historical reference, right? To
the film.
Okay.
I think so.
The term?
Yeah, the term. Yeah, the film's called Gaslight, and in it, this husband is trying to convince his wife that she's crazy to get her put away. I think so he can get money or something like that. But that's sort of where the term,
Yep.
I think is where the term originated.
Mhm.
It is quite good.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's not comfortable.
Well, that's okay.
It's not comfortable.
Yeah.
Right. And it certainly has that dynamic of the damsel in distress versus the
Mm-hmm.
conniving guy, and then the guy who can rescue her and all that. So it's got all those old
Oh, good.
familiar tropes, that's in it. But anyway,
Okay. Well, maybe we'll check it out, Hubby Dave.
yeah, I'm not sure how many people use the term gaslight know that it came from a film.
You know what? Maybe that will be my follow-up questions in the future.
There you
with
go.
my clients.
Like, how did you
Yeah, where'd you
become
hear
aware
that?
of that?
Yeah, where'd you hear that? So,
Yes.
man, I gotta tell you, yeah, and Hubby Dave knows, man. She takes apart words better than anybody I
She
know.
does.
So you gotta
Yes.
know.
You have to be very careful,
Yeah, you gotta know what you're saying.
very intentional.
That's good though, because it opens up those questions we can ask ourselves. Maybe there's a better way for me to frame that.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
All right. Well, we're out of time again.
Goes by fast, always.
It does. It does. How was this time, Hubby Dave?
Much better.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah, much better.
He's getting more
Yeah, I've
comfortable.
become-
More
yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah.
I don't. Well, comfortable. That's.
Yeah.
But it
But
did
you're
go by
sitting with the
fast.
discomfort.
It
Oh,
did
good.
go by fast. That's
Yeah, it
for
always
sure.
goes by fast.
Mhm.
So, and you got the good radio voice, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, well, thanks for being here. Come back
Thank you for having me.
anytime.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Pretty much can, because kind
Yeah.
of Tawny's call, isn't it? Yours,
good.
both yours together. So, well,
Amen.
and to all of you out there listening, thank you so much for doing so. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Breaking Up with RBS. We'll be back next week for yet another episode and conversation. Make sure to check out our Facebook page, this YouTube channel, get it as a podcast. Check out the 6-week self-mastery course. There's so many things now.
So many things.
We're spreading out.
Yes.
The tentacles are going way out.
Are they? Okay.
That's not the best analogy. Anyway,
Anyways,
we'll come up
but
with a
it's
better
okay.
one next time.
Well, okay.
So until next time, JDK Winnigan.
And I'm Tawny Santabria.
See you later.
Quite a certain harmful habit.
Stop it now, I mean it.
I don't think he felt anything after the crash.
2 seconds, Johnny.